Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Dangerous Rhetoric. This is episode 116. It's been a while. We've had a little break. Daniel is still breaking. He has to get himself situated in his new location. So the show must go on. So we are continuing. He will be back. Don't worry. For now, you can stalk him on Instagram if you would like at Dan De La Fey. Today, we are talking to Chad Manley, aka Seph Pelech, who is an author and Twitter friend of mine, and we're going to get into some general discussion about art later on. But thank you very much, Chad, for joining us. Which name should I use?
You can call me Seph. That's all right.
Seph. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. Glad to be back.
Yeah, no problem. So do you just want to give people a little brief intro blurb, like pitch your book, basically?
So, oh geez, how much should I say? We've talked about it a little bit before in the podcast, but so it is I wanted to poke a little bit of fun at the wealth of LGBTQ books in the young adult genre, and so in order to do that, I wrote my own. Essentially,
that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and I wrote my own. That's kind of a comment and pokes fun at that weird subgenre that's quickly becoming a I don't even know if you should even call it a subgenre anymore because it's so big. But it's about a high school baseball player who is in the closet and faces a number of obstacles on his as he tries to stay in the closet, although social circumstances are pushing him to come out. And that's probably all I feel like saying. I don't want to spoil it, for in case anyone does want to read it, but yeah, no, it's a great romp. Go read it. Definitely
go read it. How did you get the idea? You just got kind of like, a little bit like overloaded with the genre, and you were like, I want to make a critique, I want to comment on this, and then you did it in the vehicle of a story.
Yeah, so it was kind of a roundabout way of how I did it because I had sought traditional publishing in the past with another book I had written, which I have since shelved because it's trash. So don't expect that to see the light of day. But I had tried to get into traditional publishing, but for anyone who's not familiar with that, basically if you've written a book, you don't send it to like Penguin Publishing or Random House, any publishing company. You don't do it that way. You have to get a literary agent, and then the agent negotiates on your behalf to the publishing houses to try to get you a good book deal. And for that, they get like 15%. It's kind of like when you're selling a house, you get a realtor, because you don't know, unless you're a realtor, you don't know all the ins and outs of how to sell real estate. So you find someone who's an expert to represent you. It's essentially like that. The thing is, the literary agents, that community is pretty small. It's pretty close knit. They're all in New York City, which means that they're all uber liberal, and they only want to represent books that they themselves enjoy or like to read, which makes sense, right? If I were in their position, I would not want to represent a book that I thought was not very good or that I just didn't like. But they all have what's called manuscript wish lists, where they list the types of books that they want to see in their inbox, right? And sometimes the wish lists are pretty broad, and sometimes they're really, really specific. I've seen, I want to see a historical romance that takes place in 17th century Eastern Seaboard America and deals with class struggles. I've seen that. And I have seen mermaids. Just give me something with mermaids. So, well, the thing is, a lot of them want to see like queer stuff. And they make a point of saying, we want diversity, we want diverse voices, we want own voices, which I think is really another story. But what they have all made pretty clear is that they do not want to, because most of them are women, they don't want to represent books and genres that women typically don't read. And so, seeing how I had just written a sports book, which was the book I shelved, I realized this is not going to happen. Also, like, they're just going to see, you know, a white conservative guy, and they're going to say no. And that sounds like I'm joking. That sounds like an exaggeration. But after the 2020 election, these literary agents were openly talking on Twitter about how they would never they would never work with conservative authors. They thought conservatives should have no voice in publishing at all. That's insane, because, you know, the books that they represent that end up getting published in America, like, that's what people are reading. Like, how, you know, you see the problem here. So anyways, I kind of just said, screw it. These people don't really care about representing art. They don't even really care about representing something that's going to make money. They just care about representing books that they can brag about, essentially. That's what you want to see. You want to do something crazy? Go into Barnes & Noble or your local big chain bookstore and walk down the young adult section. And it's going to be filled with, like, gay this, gay that, trans this, queer that. And, you know, these books don't make any money. These books make next to no money. But somehow they still get published. They still get, like, over and over and over again, books like this get published. And the reason is the agents just represent them because they want to brag about it. They want to say, oh, well, I was the agent for this author who wrote a book about a non-binary Latinx witch, and I think that's pretty cool. So I was like, okay, if I want to get traditionally published, basically I have to win the acceptance of these people, and that's not something I would want in any other context. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to write a book where I make fun of them, and I'm going to publish it myself. So
fun. Yeah,
that was a really long-winded answer, and I apologize. But
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's perfect. And you did give a good, you know, that was sort of the experience I had. I self-published a fantasy with a gay protagonist in like 2016, 17. I forget when it was that I finished it, but that was the fun experience that I had trying to go and get an agent. And it was interesting. You know, I had a couple of agents that were interested, and then they sort of like read the first bit of it and then just was like, no, never mind. I was like, all right, well, I guess it doesn't have the whatever, the je ne sais quoi that they were looking for. But it was a fun story to write, and I liked the characters, and it was a good exercise in just like writing fiction. But
yeah. How long was it, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I think it was like 82,000 words ish.
Okay.
So it was like 180 pages, 190 pages, depending on how you cut it.
Well, if it's in a book, if it's 100 or if it's 80,000 words, it'd probably be like 320 pages in a normal sized book, I think.
Yeah, well, it was standard novel length. Like I think it was. Yeah. I think it was about 82,000 words.
Especially for a debut author.
And it was supposed to be the first of a trilogy. I still have the rest of the story in the back of my brain somewhere and scribbled out in notes. And I might finish it one day.
Yeah.
But it's just on the back burner for now. So what about stories? We can maybe branch more generally into media today. One of the things that drives me nuts is that everything is derivative. You know, everything is an adaptation of something else. You know, out here on Fire Island, one of the things the guys love is like Broadway and musicals. And I was hanging out with some of the guys. We were just, you know, he was playing some songs from like Mean Girls and what was the other one? Legally Blonde. Like, and these are like movies that were basically turned into musicals, and I was just like, why? Also, I found out that Heathers was adapted as well, and I was just like, why are you gonna mess with that? Like, Heathers is such it's like such classic cinema, so dark, and like you can't really like I was just like, how dare you like take that and turn it into like this like musical where you're like singing and dancing, and I don't know, it just irked me so much. And then also the more modern things with television, you know, I'm like actually like secretly happy about this like Hollywood writer's strike and actor's strike. I'm like, good, go on strike, stay on strike forever.
Yeah, and you know,
never come back.
You know, I'm a labor economist, and so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, wait, now the point of a union is to essentially increase the wages and benefits of the workers, right? The workers who are members of the union.
To protect their rights, yeah.
Right. That only happens if you, one, can argue that these workers can do something that other people can't. So they're skilled in a certain way, or they produce a quality of product in a way that nobody else can. And two, that you can only improve the benefits by reducing the supply of the labor. So, you know, for example, a pilots union, like the pilots union has done this by increasing the standards of what it takes to call yourself a pilot. And thereby, by increasing the credentials necessary, they have also increased their wages because they shut out a lot of people from being able to call themselves pilots. So how does this work with screenwriters, considering I haven't seen a TV show or a movie that was well written in like 10 years. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you know, it's not, they're not churning out gold. Okay. They're not sending their best. And you got to wonder, like, what do you think your leverage is here? So I'm kind of curious how this is going to end for them, because some TV shows are just so terrible. And like the writers make fun of their own bad writing in the show in a way that's trying to make it like so bad that it's good, and it's just not working. It's guys, maybe just write better. Like, that sounds mean, but you know, it's an option.
Well, there's just so much garbage out there, and it has become pretty apparent. Like the new Star Treks, for example, are like universally panned by fans. I haven't even bothered to watch Strange New Worlds or Discovery just because I'm so offended by just what I've seen. You know, the bits that I've seen, I'm just like, this is not Star Trek. Also, I did watch Picard, and I watched all 3 seasons, and I found it to be more like a Netflix, you know, extended series, something like Stranger Things. It's like a long movie, basically, you know, chopped up into chapters. That's not Star Trek. Star Trek was essentially episodic, and Gene Roddenberry used to rail against the sort of like extended plot lines and drawing that shit out. Like, he wanted each one to be like a self-contained thing, and that was like a big point of him, and it went into the show. And if you look at Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, they did have those, you know, continued cliffhangered and sort of overarching plots, but each show was a contained experience, you know, let alone cliffhangers and, you know, season finales and season premieres. But generally speaking, they were, you know, very self-contained, and there was always sort of like a lesson that generally had to do with about, you know, like family or your responsibility in society or what it meant to be a person. And it was very, they would encode these ideas in the story in a way that wasn't like bashing you over the head with, you know, social justice, politically correct bullshit. The way that the writers do today. The writers today, I feel like they, you know, in the past, they really appreciated their audience. They respected their intellect. They understood, you know, how to make these things subtle and palatable. for your consideration. You watch the original or the Next Generation, and there's a very famous episode where in the first season where Data, the android, it comes up, is he property or is he a person? Does he have rights? And that idea, like it was just such a really well put together elaboration of those concepts and what it means to be human. And it's just something they don't do today. Now they hit you over the head with, things should be this way or you're a bigot. And it's just like, this is just lazy. Like, it's lazy writing. It's cliche because everyone's doing it. And it drives me up a wall when they take, a cherished property like Star Trek or Star Wars, and, they put some woman in charge and she's, turning it into this like Broadway musical version of what she thinks it should be. Like Star Trek, I think it's Strange New Worlds, just did a musical episode, was one of their last episodes. And I was just like, Joss Whedon did that in the late 90s in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Once More with Feeling. And if you guys haven't watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer out there from the 90s, it's an amazing series. Joss Whedon did an amazing job writing it. And it has an ending, and the ending is good. So I highly recommend that one.
I mean, just to give you like an example of how shows have gone downhill for exactly the reason that you said, of just beating you over the head with the message instead of like subtly implying it or even having a conversation within the narrative about what, the moral or whatever. I'm sure you have, I hope you have. Did you watch like the first few seasons of Home Improvement?
Oh yeah.
It's so good.
Classic.
And that show was all about like the differences between men and women.
Yep.
Like, and the later seasons were not so good, but like the first 4 seasons, I would say, it was like Tim and Jill would get into arguments a lot because they both saw the same situation from just different perspectives. And sometimes like Tim was obviously in the wrong, sometimes Jill was obviously in the wrong, but there was a lot where it was like kind of, there was, you could see it from both perspectives, and then they'd have to go talk to Wilson to straighten their stuff out. Like that was a sitcom that was on what, ABC or something?
It's like ABC, NBC, CBS, one of the big ones.
Yeah. Like that quality of writing would never happen today on a sitcom. Like I have seen a few episodes of like sitcoms from the last 5 years, and I've always thought they were horrible. Absolutely horrible. And I'm like, where is the joke? What is, like you said, what is the moral here? Because it just seems like, oh, wasn't this a quirky thing that happened in these characters' lives today? It's like, okay, but why do I care? And they want more money.
Right, exactly. Like the one thing, a good story has to be compelling. It has to hook you. You have to be invested in the characters and the outcome of the situation that you've presented those characters in. And if you can't do that, or if your characters come across as, obnoxious or, pathetic, that's not, it doesn't hook the interest of the audience to really care what happens. You're like, well, what? Okay. So like, there's just some like wacky weirdo and why do I care? Like, that's the one thing that drives me up the wall. I just watched the new Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And I found it very compelling. It was really good on tugging on the heartstrings.
Yeah.
Very heavy themes of paternity, fraternity, family, and how all of those things interact, and how, it's so basically you do anything for the people that you love, even if the love is more fraternal or paternal, and not erotic. Which is not something that we're not really good at parsing in Western culture. It doesn't seem to be a very good grasp that there are these different kinds of love and that they're all very powerful and gravitational in a way. Like they attract you, they pull you. towards people, and the way that they sort of laid that out in the movie, I thought was very good. And also, they had really excellent action sequences. The music was amazing. Like, I was very impressed. For a Disney film, for a Marvel film. I haven't really been too into the Marvel things lately, just because it's cliche. Once you've seen, like, how many Marvel movies have we had right now? Like,
Yeah.
we're in the 2 dozens, 3 dozens somewhere. Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the thing about the Guardians of the Galaxy series is that they're just so creative. That little trilogy of movies, they're so creative. Like even in this third one, when they go to that space station that was like all organic material, I thought that was like so clever
creative.
and so such an interesting take on like what a space station could be. Because like anybody else who that was James Gunn who pretty sure he wrote it, but he directed that series. Anyone else at Disney who was writing a movie where they had to find a space station, it would just be like generic, like big metal thing and floating in space. And James Gunn was like, no, it's going to be organic material. And so that's what's going to be weird about it. And then there's also the really funny moment when security finds them, when Mantis like goes up to that one guy and she's just like violent rage and he's just, like shooting everybody. Oh man, yeah, I really enjoyed that movie.
I liked Mantis and Drax's sort of arc. Like, he was just like this stupid fuck up, and but it turns out like his stupid fucked upness is what led him to have a big enough heart to be able to like parent well, or like just to handle large amounts of children, and then they end up freeing all the children. And I thought that was very symbolic too, the way that they had this like evil dude that had like a bunch of kids in cages, and he was going to turn them into like his perfect people or whatever. It was very reminiscent of like Jeffrey Epstein, at least for me, because that was one of Epstein's goal. He was trying to impregnate these intelligent young women so that he could like father like a generation of like super people or whatever. And that's similar to what this guy. What was the guy's name? I don't even remember his name. The character, the purple gravity control.
Yeah, I don't know.
The high evolutionary or something. It was. He's so forgettable. I mean, he's a little bit. If there's if there's a problem with the movie, he's just a little typical. You have this like authoritarian dictator who basically
yells a lot,
who's going to create the perfect world by having to kill a bunch of people and name them. It's just very like.
Which it's so funny that you mentioned that, because whenever people talk about the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, they almost never mention the villain. They're always like, oh, it was so charming, I loved it, the main cast and their chemistry and blah blah blah. They like never mention the villain. They're like, oh yeah, I guess they were like trying to defeat a bad guy or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, the story, I mean, the villain really is more just a foil for how to bringing people together to save Rocket, after his injury or whatever. Like he's just sort of there. And then, he really comes into the fore more, I guess, in like the second half of the movie. It's pretty long. It's about 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 20 minutes, something like that. I had to watch it in 2 parts. I fell asleep. I got through the first hour and I was like, okay, there's a perfect spot where it was like music was playing. They were in space. I was like, this is a good stopping point. And I watched the rest of it later. But I definitely did enjoy it, and it had me, a little bit in tears at the end. It's very tuggy. They were good at tugging on the heartstrings. I was like, this is making me emotional.
It's funny that you say that, because I thought the ending was probably the weakest part. That to me, like the very ending, like the last 5 minutes, that felt like the most like formulaic. Like, I don't know, let's just wrap this up and set up a TV show or something.
Yeah.
Because Mantis was just like, I need to go do what I want to do, like randomly out of nowhere. Like she never expressed these feelings ever in the movie, and then spoilers, guys. And then she's just like, bye. And it's very clear that they were trying to set up the possibility of a future TV show, probably on Disney Plus, and like Mantis,
Right. Yeah.
And then they
spinoff.
played that one song. I don't like that song actually. So
Which
and
one?
you could tell, by the way, in the editing that they're like, oh, we'll just pick a song later. We'll do some market research and figure out what song we should play at the end. We'll see what the numbers say about that, because the dancing didn't really seem to match the music that well. And they hit it enough with the cuts that you couldn't quite tell, but you could tell the director was like, all right, I guess just like dance, everybody, just dance. And like,
Just like throw your hands up, yeah. Now I'm gonna go back and watch it again, and now I'm gonna pay extra special attention to that dance number at the end there.
Okay, another technical note that bothered me. There was some scene closer to the end where the purple villain dude was in like his, generic command room of the spaceship or whatever. And the blocking was fine. They did not establish the business well. So he was like yelling. First of all, it's all green screen. It's all green screen. So he's just like yelling and pointing at the green screen. And you can tell the actor is just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm just standing here yelling, like, guys, give me something to do. And the director's like, gotta be a green screen. Gotta be a green screen, dude. And he's like, all right, I guess I'll just stand here and yell awkwardly. Just try to get a closer shot so it doesn't come across how weird this is.
Yeah, that's the other weakness I feel like of all the, like, I saw the new Ant-Man, which was very similar in that it had a kind of like forgettable villain who was just like, and I think there was actually some controversy with that actor. I feel like he got in trouble for something, and now he won't be coming back. But again, it was just a lot of green screen, and a lot of reliance on like quirky, nonsense that just sort of like, it's like, isn't this a quirky thing? And it's just like, you guys are just lazy. Like, you're lazy. So that's why I really don't care. If they never come back, great. There's a lot of independent stuff happening. I really want to see this new this movie, Sound of Freedom. I haven't had an opportunity yet.
I saw that one.
How was it?
I enjoyed it. Again, technical note, blocking was fine. The business needed some work. Do you know what I'm talking about when I talk about blocking in business?
No, why don't you explain it?
Okay, so in filmmaking, and I haven't been to film school, I just watched too many movies. But
me too.
And they explain this on Red Letter Media too, so go check it out. But yeah, so there are two things that you need to keep in mind when you're filming a scene, right? It's blocking and business. The blocking is how you establish where everyone and everything important is in the physical space. So movies that mess this up, they'll show a close-up reaction to a character, and you'll be confused. You'll be like, wait, where is this person? I don't understand where in the scene this actor is, and it's just disorienting. Right. So blocking makes sure that is done really well. Steven Spielberg is like the master of blocking. He's very, very good at it. And then there's business. So that is what the actors are doing and why they're doing it. So it would be really boring if, there was a scene where two characters were having a conversation. It'd be really boring if they were just sitting in chairs talking the entire time. You need to give them some business. So, maybe the conversation sort of like takes a turn in the middle. And at that point, you would want one of the characters to get up and walk to the other side of the room. Okay, but why is he walking to the other side of the room? Is he making a drink? Is he turning on some music? Like, what is he doing? So the blocking and Sound of Freedom was good. I was never like confused or disoriented about like who was where. But there were, again, a couple scenes where people were just standing there giving their lines, and you're like, what are you doing? Why are you standing here? And one thing I like to joke about is that the movie should be called Dramatic Lean In, because Jim Caviezel did the dramatic lean in probably 5 times in the movie. where he was like sitting back and then he would just go. Which again, if you establish the business well, that could be a good punctuation. Again, when a conversation takes a turn in the middle of a scene. But it wasn't done that way. It was just sort of like sprinkled randomly throughout. And it was like, okay, guys, you gotta let's think about this a little bit more. Not that I'm a filmmaker, but you know, I'm an armchair critic.
And you know, that's what we do. That's like what the space is for. Like we're supposed to sit out here in armchair. That's like the whole point of the show, is like we're gonna spew things that are gonna make people upset because we don't like them or we have critique. Like, deal with it, bitch. You know, I still want to see it. I think the subject matter is really important. It's super topical, especially considering a lot of the migrants that are coming over the southern border are just basically getting shunted into human trafficking, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, organ trafficking. And it's all being sort of just like covered up, you know, put to the side, ignored. The New York Times will do a piece like once a year about it, you know, in some isolated, you know, context. I think they did one about some like roofing, like some kid who fell off a roof or whatever in Florida. And they did another one about they caught a bunch of kids working overnight in like a chicken processing plant or a chicken farm somewhere in like Ohio.
Oh, I think I heard about that one.
These were like the two pieces that the New York Times, the gray lady, the gold standard of journalistic integrity and investigative journalism. This were the two pieces they did, and they published them, and then, you know, they were like, you know, a couple of pages, you know, deep, not a front page story, and the story just basically is just like, oh, there it is, and next, whatever, you know, back to talking about Trump every day. Like, it's just so ridiculous. I can't. You know, and this is like modern day slavery, you know, for all the talk the left gives about how much, you know, they want reparations for, you know, descendants of African-American slaves and how bad slavery was and racism and this, that, and the third. They don't seem to be very concerned for the actual slavery, the modern day that's happening right now in this country under our noses. They don't give no fucks about that. So
yeah, and then there are crazy people on Twitter who I've seen where regarding child sex trafficking, they're like, well, you know, if sex work was legal, that wouldn't be happening. And I'm like, oh my God, what? It's like, yeah, it would still be happening, actually.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And it just blows my mind that there's not, I guess it's because there's just so much happening all the time. You know, humans, we have very limited bandwidth and how much just information and experience we can process in a 24-hour period. And it makes it very hard, especially when you actually have to acknowledge and contemplate that there are children, women, and young men being trafficked, forced into labor trafficking, forced into sex trafficking, and some of them actually being sacrificed and sliced up so that their organs can be peddled on the black market. That really, if you acknowledge that and accept that as a reality, you know, you have if you have a conscience, you have to do something about it. You can't just like ignore that. You're like, oh, that's an interesting tidbit, you know, like of trivia, whatever. And you can't just accept it. So I feel like that's why a lot of people don't want to hear it, because then, you know, their conscience would prod them into, you know, doing something about it. So we had Tara Lee Rodas and Aaron Stevenson on the show. They were both two whistleblowers that talked about it. And they're two of many. There's so many people that are talking about this problem. And I would love to see, you know, Hollywood maybe make a movie that could somehow explain it and do it, you know, do a better job of Sound of Freedom, you know, put all that big budget.
I still, I mean, to the extent that the movie can be enjoyed given the subject matter.
Right. I mean, I feel
like we're saying like, wow, that was really good.
Right. It's like, that was a really good movie. I mean, well, and that was kind of I did see a little like the shades of that in Guardians 3. And when, you know, they had all those kids in cages, I was like, this is interesting imagery in the current context. Yeah. Of course, all the kids were like these little like blondish, you know, ethnically indistinct. They were like blondish, gray, silver-haired, tan skin, like middling-aged children. I guess they were probably from the ages of, I would say, I don't know, what, 6 to 12. all those kids at the end there.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting. It was a good movie. I liked that one. And I really haven't seen much coming out lately that catches my interest. Granted, I haven't paid much attention to the last month. I've been so busy. I haven't really been plugged into media at all. Is there anything good coming out that I should be interested in?
I did see Oppenheimer, and that was really, really good.
That was with what's his name, right?
Cillian Murphy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That was really good. I saw the new Ari Aster movie with Joaquin Phoenix. It's called Beau is Afraid. I really like that movie. Not for everybody. It's not an adaptation. It's an original movie that he wrote. I really liked it. It's long. It's like 3 hours long. I don't know why, but I guess it was the production company A24 just being like, you know what? You made us so much money with Hereditary, Midsummer. Like, do what you want. We'll let you do it. So
sounds like he needed a good editor.
I think that movie was a flop. I don't think it earned back its budget at the box office, which is upsetting. But also, just because of how weird the movie is, I kind of get it. I think it'll be okay on streaming.
Can you give me a synopsis? What's the
yeah? So Joaquin Phoenix plays a man named Beau who has anxiety, and he's trying to get home to see his mother. That's about it. And just one enormous obstacle after the other, and you kind of, the whole movie is sort of like from his perspective with his anxiety, and it's definitely a surreal horror comedy. Like there are certain things in the movie that are very clearly metaphorical because there's just no rational explanation for them. Who was it? Chris Stuckman did a review of the movie, and I agree with him when he said, you know, you should go watch it just because there's never going to be another movie like this. It's certainly unique from that perspective. So, and that was another thing. Like there was this came out several years ago, but the director Gore Verbinski made a movie. He made a horror film called A Cure for Wellness. And I really enjoyed that movie, but it did not do well at the box office. It completely bombed. Critics gave it like mediocre reviews. But then Chris Stuckman did a review on it, and he said, you know, I really enjoyed this. And it's really frustrating that critics are always saying like, come on, Hollywood, give us more original content. And then when somebody does make something original, they just trash it. They're like, this sucked.
Not that original.
Yeah. So 2 movie recommendations: Beau is Afraid and A Cure for Wellness. So.
Nice. Very good. Very good. Yeah, no, I also saw that this Barbie film was coming out, and I thought that was, again, derivative. And I saw the trailer, and I was just like, you know, this reminds me a lot of the Lego movie, which, or also, what's the other movie? Shoot, it's blanking. It's the one where he's like a video game character and he sort of like comes to awareness. No, it's Free. No, Free Guy.
Oh yeah, I really liked Free Guy.
I liked it too.
Yeah,
but again, this idea of like, you know, somebody in a simulated universe coming to awareness that they're in a simulated universe and like trying to, you know, branch out or interact with like the real world. It's just getting on my nerves now. I'm like, you know, they
I don't think that was Free Guy though. It's been a while since I saw it because I saw it in theaters, and who knows how long ago it came out, probably a couple of years now. I don't think he was trying to escape his reality.
No, it wasn't. That was more, they were more like, you know, trying to prove that the architecture of the game that they were in belonged to the other people, and then she was suing, and they were just trying to get the architecture back so they could revert it to its like natural state or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, it had this idea of, it's like very Tron, where you have a real world and a digital world. Or like, in the Lego movie, it's like the toy world and like the real world, these like parallel universes on top of each other. It's just, I don't know. I saw them doing it with Barbie and I was like, okay, I get it. You're going to put hot people in the movie. And, but then I heard that it's got sort of an anti-feminist slant to it where, she ultimately decides to live in the real world, which is like a world controlled by men. And so I don't know, I haven't seen it. So, and I don't really like, not super excited to see it. It's not like something I'm going to like rush out to see, but I just thought it was.
Yeah. I heard, some conservative commentators going back and forth about whether or not it's a good movie. And I think it was Michael Knowles who apparently really liked it and said just what you were saying, like, oh, there's an anti-feminist slant to this. And why is it that all of Greta Gerwig's movies have this anti-feminist slant, even though she's supposedly a feminist? Like, I don't know, guys, is she a closet conservative? What's going on? And I'm like, I think you're reading too into it. Honestly, I think third wave feminism is so incoherent that they don't even know how to win people over to it without owning themselves.
Right.
That's what I think it is. I did really like Lady Bird. Greta Gerwig did Lady Bird. I really liked that movie. I don't know why, but the scene where have you seen it?
I feel like I have, like years ago.
Yeah. There was a scene because they're like Catholic school kids. There was a scene where they're like chilling. They cut class and they're like eating the Eucharistic.
Oh, I remember this movie.
Yes. And someone's like, "You're not supposed to be eating those." And like, they're not consecrated. It's okay.
No, that movie was definitely like full of awkward comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one too. That was like 2017. Yeah, coming of age comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a funny one. But I was just like looking at like, a list of all the, hotly anticipated films for the year. And it's like Barbie, Oppenheimer's on there, Haunted Mansion, which I'm pretty sure is derivative. Disney's first.
Yeah, they already made a Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy in like 2003.
Right. And then there's a Meg sequel. The Meg's coming back, the giant shark.
Oh yeah, son.
There's also a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated thing. There's Blue Beetle, which is it's a DC adaptation.
Okay.
Gran Turismo, which is a video game adaptation. Equalizer 3, which is Denzel Washington, Dakota Fanning. Those two go back forever. The Nun 2, like all these movies are not like original properties. There's one here that's called The Creator. This might be an actual original film from writer-director Gareth Edwards, an epic sci-fi action thriller set amidst a future war between the human race and the forces of artificial intelligence. Ooh. Oh,
I saw a trailer for that. Okay.
Yeah, they have a trailer here. I haven't seen or heard of it, but maybe it's a somewhat original screenplay. We'll see. I did just finish reading the second book in the Hyperion Cantos from Dan Simmons. I'm not sure you're pronouncing it. Okay. And holy shit, is it amazing. Like, I think he wrote these books in like the early 80s or the 80s. And huge award winners, really deep content. The first book is kind of a slog because the first two books really are the first book. It's a very complicated, layered story with multiple characters, and it deals with very heady concepts like the Abrahamic sacrifice of his son, and the choice to put faith in God to stop the blade, and all this shit. And then it also gets into AI and the nature of AI and how humanity in the future sort of becomes not a slave to it overtly, but sort of covertly we become addicted to the things that AI provides. And in this particular story, they have these portals called Farcasters, which are controlled and regulated by the artificial intelligence organization. It's called the Core. and they let people that lets you basically instantaneously travel from one point in the galaxy to another just by stepping through a portal. So humanity spread out over hundreds of planets across the galaxy, and they're all connected by these Farcaster portals. And there's this one planet called Hyperion where like the rules don't apply. The AI can't predict anything that has to do with Hyperion very well, whereas otherwise the AI is like 99.98% accurate in predicting the future. And it's very heady concepts. The characters are really good, and there's excellent action. And the second book really, you don't really get introduced to the protagonist until the second book, and the protagonist is actually John Keats, like the legendary poet. The author resurrects him as a cybrid, which is basically a AI human sort of combination. The hardware is all human, but it's like a genetically engineered human that also has implants so that it can interact with like the technocore, or it can go sort of cybernetic, and he has like a digital persona. So basically he survives after death, and it's very heady, very interesting stuff. It's funny because I read The Expanse prior to this, and this idea of having like portals connect far systems in space was like, I thought it was I was like, oh, this is such an original concept. And then I read this book and I'm like, oh, this was written like, decades before, like they probably read this. Like, but I really love the story and I can't recommend it enough. My friend Juana turned me onto it, and I can't wait to go. I have to get the third. There's, I think, 4 books total, but they're talking about turning it into a movie or a Netflix or a Amazon Prime, and I'm just like, please don't do it.
Yeah.
Just leave it, because it's so amazing as it is, and it's so layered, and the story is so dense. This is the thing, when you're adapting a book or a novel into a movie or a screenplay, you lose a lot of the depth of the story, because by the nature of the medium, you can only present so much at a time. Whereas in a novel, you can layer these things, you can build them up, you can hyperlink them through the text, and it really lets you build out a universe at your own pace, because you read the thing at however fast you can read the thing. Whereas a story, you're sort of, for anywhere between 90 minutes and 3 hours now, you watch what is presented on the screen, and it's a much more sort of like fed to you experience, and because of that, there's only so much information you can absorb, and you lose a lot of the texture and backstory. This is one of the things I noticed when I watched. So I first watched The Expanse, and then I started reading the books, and then I went back to watching, and I noticed where they cut things, because the story would do these weird little inconsistencies that don't really line up with the nature of the characters or the choices they would make. And it's not something you would notice unless you read the books and you were invested in the characters, and you were really, you knew the characters. And then when you watch the show, you're like, that's inconsistent. But that's why I feel like adaptation, while it can be done well, it does happen well. I think the Lord of the Rings movies were an amazing adaptation of the story. It lost very minimal of the depth of the texture, and retained a lot of, I would say probably upwards of 90 to 95% of the original content, and made it, it felt like you were, watching the books on screen.
Yep.
Whereas some of these ones are just like, I feel like they just try to put on a show, like Ready Player One, for example. Very flashy. The story itself, if you read the book, is also just kind of very fantasy driven. It's not what I would consider like challenging fiction, where like the character goes through this like loss or this growth period. A lot of coming of age tales, the character suffers tremendously, and that suffering leads the character to a realization, or to a choice, or to a path that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And that's what makes the story interesting. That's why you're invested. That's what makes it compelling and makes you want to find out what happens. Whereas Ready Player One, it just sort of seemed like this like pop culture nostalgia celebration almost of I would call it masturbatory fantasy wish fulfillment. You know, the kid basically is like he plays video games, right? And his playing of video games ends up turning him into the most richest man possible with control of the digital universe, and everyone's happy.
Hey kids, it could happen to you.
Exactly, right? Exactly. It just feels so I don't know. It's not true to life. You know, life is suffering, life is hard. You know, life, if you want a positive outcome, you have to aim at it again and again and again and again and continue to take shots and continue to improve your aim. And that's the only way to really get there. You can't just like, you know, play video games in your entire life and expect one day that like it's going to pay off. You know, now that does work out for some people. You know, like there are a few people that can turn playing video games into, you know, a source of income, but it's not. I don't know, for the long haul. To me, that doesn't seem like the.
Well, the thing is, the people who can do that, it's not because they're really good at playing video games. That might be part of it. It's also because they have a personality and they know how to interact with their audience, like on streaming or something, while they're playing the game. So if you just sit there and you play the video game and you don't like talk to the people who are watching you, then you're probably not going to do well. Like the people who have successful streaming platforms, who have like serious income from it, have personalities, which is something that I think a lot of wannabe gamers forget about.
Well, it's also something that's very hard for young people to have a personality because they don't have a lot of experience to develop one. Like or you know, if you're very gifted and you had amazing parents, like yes, you'll get that. But you know, that's usually something that you kind of build in your 20s, and it really doesn't fully sort of crystallize until your early 30s, even.
Yeah.
At least that's how it was for me. Like I had no idea who I was until my early to mid 30s, actually. So it just took a while to kind of figure that shit out. And in today's culture, we sort of encourage that infantilization of the individual, especially young men. They don't want, you know, they want a lot of like strong-willed, powerful, confident young men coming into the scene who might disrupt the status quo. That's like the danger. But we'll see what happens with Hollywood. I like, frankly, they can just keep on strike. I have no problem with them just, you know, taking off as long as they need.
When you watch a movie or a TV show, typically, how old is it?
Nowadays, like, so the last thing that I was watching was I was watching the other night the X-Men and Spider-Man cartoons from the 90s on Disney Plus. So that's old.
Yeah.
And then those stories are actually derivatives of comic books that were written in the 50s and 60s and 70s too. I was watching the Phoenix Saga. There's a 5-part X-Men cartoon in the 3rd season that is just really good story. Like it's the story of, you know, the X-Men go into space because Professor Xavier gets this like message from this like alien woman, and she needs help, and she's trying to protect this thing called the M-Cron crystal from her brother Tashen, who is the leader of the Shi'ar Empire. It's this like big space empire or whatever. And he has come to power as ruler, and he wants the crystal, and the crystal has the power to basically recreate the universe. So it'll pull the entire galaxy into itself, and then all that matter will be realigned within the crystal, and then whoever, you know, opened it basically becomes god of the crystal world.
Okay.
And then the Phoenix is the entity that is chosen. She's like a protective fire force, and she takes over Jean Grey as the X-Men are trying to interact with these aliens, and they go back and forth, and then they end up getting sucked into the crystal, and they have to fight the guy, and she ends up having to sacrifice herself, and it's just like very compelling story. And you know, it reminds me of Final Fantasy VII when Eris is killed. Spoiler alert if you haven't played that game. But this idea of sacrifice, especially of like female characters, and how they are generally like very pure, defensive, caring, and their willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice. I find it very just a compelling plot point, and it you know, echoes, it resonates with motherhood, you know, because motherhood is very, you know, sacrificing. You know, it's basically an 18-year commitment you make to raise that child. And it also used to be very potentially risky to the life of the mother, you know, before we had modern medicine and the ability to combat infections and things and perform emergency surgeries. So all these things, these are very heady, very human themes that I feel like are just sort of tossed aside now in favor of the quirky, funny, goofy, sexy bullshit, you know, du jour, whatever's, you know, it's like whatever's trendy in the moment is what they cough up in the screenplays. Like, did you see the Scooby-Doo series that was with like Velma?
Velma? No, I didn't see it, but I saw those
I saw enough.
Players.
Yeah. I watched a couple of clips, and there was one point where it was again, it was like you were saying earlier, they were obviously like aware of their style choices, and they were like trying to like break the fourth wall a little bit and go meta, and it was just coming across as like arrogant and overconfident and bad. And I saw that clip going around on Twitter.
I was just like, fourth wall break, or, you know, self-aware writing. I'm not like a master writer, but, you know, this is just my opinion. You have to be really careful with how you do it, or it's going to come across as arrogant, or like you're admitting your own bullshit instead of just writing better. It's like in Jurassic World when they were like, Verizon Wireless presents the the State Farm Insurance Indominus Rex. And then they were like, oh God, like, isn't it so ridiculous how we have to add these companies as sponsors to the name? It's like, or you could not do that. You could not go for the, you know, cheap ad placement and just skip that little joke and move on, especially because I don't think it was referenced again in the entire movie. And that movie made so much money at the box office. You did not need the ad placement right there.
Right. Like, you're really hurting that bad, you need ad rev? Come on.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're going to be self-aware, you got to be really careful. It's going to come across the wrong way to the audience. Also, I think it should be brief. I think it should be really brief. Like, you were just giving a quick glance to the camera and then like, that's it. Sort of like, I don't know if you ever watched the show Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide.
Nope.
I'm probably a little too old, but that was about, that was on when I was a kid, and I loved that show because the writing was so good. But it was a show on Nickelodeon about this kid named Ned Bigby, who was in middle school, and he had a guide to survive school. And so every episode there was a different theme, and he was giving tips and everything. The thing is, every episode, it's kind of like the format was kind of like SpongeBob, where there was a 30-minute block, but there were two 11-minute episodes with an ad break in the middle. Okay. So these episodes moved super fast, which meant the writing had to be like really tight. And there was one episode where they did like a very quick fourth wall break, and it was the funniest thing. I need to go find it. But it was so funny because they were just having their normal conversation, then everyone just looks at the camera and then looks back at each other. It's like, if you it's got to be really brief. You can't dwell on it, because otherwise it's just going to come off as the wrong way. It's like if you've seen Annie Hall, where Woody Harrelson is like in line and he's listening to some insufferable guy just go on about like, there's this, I'm a professor and there's this one writer whose work I have to cover and it's so awful and I hate it, but I have to do it. And then Woody Harrelson is like, well, actually, I have that writer right here. He's with me to come see this movie. And he's like, you know nothing of my work. I have no idea how you ever came to be a professor. And then Woody Harrelson looks right at the camera and he's like, wouldn't it be great if life were actually like this? It's got to be really quick. Yeah. When you just know that, oh, that's a quick way to wrap up a joke or to wrap up a scene, but you don't understand why, it's just going to come off the wrong way.
Yeah, the only time I think I've seen it done well long form was in Deadpool.
Yes.
That movie, that writing is very, I don't know, it's unique. It's not your typical hero film, although it is in many ways very similar. A lot darker, a lot more bloody, and a lot more comedic, I would say. They focus more heavily on the comedy. But he does a lot of fourth wall breaks, and I thought they were good. I like the first two films. I think Ryan, what's his last name? Ryan, shoot, I'm blanking on that guy's name.
Ryan Reynolds.
Reynolds, yeah. He's fun. I feel like he was basically like made for that role.
Yeah.
Because especially if you watch some of his older movies, like Waiting, some of his other stuff, very similar vibe.
Just Friends, I remember that one.
Yeah, he's a great guy. That's one thing about like actors like him. Like he sort of like almost plays himself in like every movie that he's in. Even in like Free Guy, he had very similar sort of.
I don't know. I thought Free Guy was the first movie I have seen where Ryan Reynolds was doing something different, and there were still pieces of his actual personality in there, but yeah. Like I thought, this sounds kind of weird, I thought he played a computer program very well, of just like that very logical thinking of like, well, I like this and I always do this, and because that's just what I like and what I always do. Right. And like anyone who's ever done any sort of coding knows that kind of understands how computers work and how programs think to the extent to which they can think, and how it's just like very step-by-step logical. And so I thought he did that really well. At the time I was saying like, I thought he should have been nominated for Best Actor for that movie, because it was like, when was the last time you saw a performance like that? Like never. And he was so convincing in that role.
Very convincing.
And who are the best actor nominees for that year? Probably like you forget. I'm gonna look it up right now, actually.
Yeah, no, I have no idea. But the music in that movie also excellent. The action sequences excellent. They have a good. The pacing is good. It doesn't really drag. I thought the love story between the two characters in the real world, and how his character was almost like a proxy for the guy who wrote the code for him. Like yeah. I thought it was really cute. It was really well done, and an interesting twist on that old idea of love is right in front of you. Your best friend is like actually the person that you're meant to be with or whatever. I liked it. I thought it was really well done. And then he did that other one that where he was like traveling back in time and like ended up meeting himself, or like using it, like having his kids.
Adam Project, the Adam.
Yeah,
Project.
That one I thought was forgettable. I'm like, this is an interesting film, but there was nothing there that sort of caught me. I feel like he was going for almost like or the director was going for like an E.T. kind of vibe, like that 80s film kind of vibe, but wasn't able to capture it, and ended up relying too much on flashy special effects and time travel plot devices, which again, time travel, it's getting cliche. Like it's,
yeah,
It's been done so much since Back to the Future, which really sort of established the genre and this idea of, a linear timeline where, there's one timeline, and if you go back and change something, then the future changes. That might not actually be how the nature of time works. We don't really know.
Yeah.
But that idea really got planted with Back to the Future, and you can see how it carried forward and impacted entertainment when it came to time travel in the sci-fi genre. It really did sort of leave that impact. And I kind of liked how in the Avengers movie, they sort of broke away from that a little bit. And they were like, well, actually, maybe it's more like multiverse style, where there's multiple branching universe and parallel pasts and parallel futures and parallel presents. And that, I think, is probably a more realistic view. But
I'm looking at the Best Actor nominations.
Yeah, what were they?
From that year. Okay. So some of these are pretty solid, I'll say. Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog.
Never saw
that. That was an amazing movie, I will say.
I do like Cumberbatch. I'm a Cumberbatch fan.
Yeah, so I stand that. Denzel Washington for Tragedy of Macbeth. Haven't seen it. Heard it was really great. I'll stand that because I like me some Shakespeare.
Denzel is also amazing.
Javier Bardem for Being the Ricardos. I saw that movie. I thought his performance was fine, but I didn't really understand like what was so unique about. I don't understand this nomination. What was so great about it?
I've seen none of these movies.
It seemed like he was playing himself, honestly.
He's a great actor, though.
Yes, he is. Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom. Did anyone see that movie?
I didn't. I mean, I love Andrew Garfield too, but I haven't seen that movie either.
Lin-Manuel Miranda needs to stop.
Yes, I agree. Somebody needs to go back in time and stop him before Hamilton.
Anything? Okay. Have I shared with you my hot take on Lin-Manuel Miranda?
No, please do, because I can't stand him.
Okay, here's Lin-Manuel Miranda's work summed up in a sentence. Black people talking and acting like white people, so white people can brag about being entertained by black people. That is every Lin-Manuel Miranda musical.
Kind of accurate. Yeah.
It's like how many white people were like, oh my God, Hamilton is so great. I love Hamilton. It's the greatest thing. It's so awesome.
Great.
It's like, you're just bragging about how you're entertained by black people. That's all you're doing. And by the way, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try Hamilton. I'm going to listen to this.
You're going to give it your open mind.
Well, I did. Cause I had heard the one song sung by the white guy, that You'll Be Back. I really like You'll Be Back. And so I was like, let me listen to this whole thing. And I listened to the first song and I was like, okay, that's decent. All right. And then I listened to the second song and I was like, nope, I'm out. This is so stupid. This is so people like this. People think this is good. This won a fucking Pulitzer. What?
Yeah, that's what drives me nuts.
So Andrew Garfield, he could go make room for Ryan Reynolds. And then this was the year that Will Smith won for King Richard.
Another movie I didn't see.
And then on this Wikipedia page, there is a subgenre or subsection called Will Smith Chris Rock slapping incident. Which you gotta love the framing. It's like when Joe Biden's dog kept biting people and they were like, the dog was involved in a biting incident. And you're like, did somebody bite the dog? Like, or is this, it's funny because in journalism, they're like, this is a dog bites man story. That means it's not really a story because it's not interesting. It's typical. And then there's a man bites dog story, which is like, whoa, that's weird. What's going on there? And I'm like, this is literally a dog bites man story. And you can't even say that. You're like, there was a biting incident. Okay. All right.
So that was that year. That was the slap
that year. Yeah.
2021?
Yeah, so Free Guy came out in 2021. So these were the Oscars held in early 2022.
Wow, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
No, it's just so funny. The slapping incident, the the whole like cuck joke, and it's like it's just so weird to me that these people are like in an open relationship and bragging about it on their podcast, and it just I don't know. I feel like it makes a mockery of the institution of marriage, which is a very unpopular opinion that I have that we've discussed before.
Well, one thing I like to say, maybe I'll tweet this because I feel like this is a good tweet.
Ooh,
if it has to be said, it's probably not true. So when there are celebrities in open relationships and they're talking about how great it is and how happy they are and how fulfilled they are, no. The same way when there is a celebrity who makes part of their brand being kind and being accepting and being just a kind person to everybody, regardless of, anything, that celebrity is 100% of the time a horrible person. We have seen this with Ellen DeGeneres. We saw this with Lizzo. Who else did we see? Chrissy Teigen, the Obamas. We have seen this time and time again. And again, if it has to be said, it's probably not true. If you constantly feel the need to go around and say, I am a really kind person and I want to be known for how kind I am to other people, it's because you're a terrible person. It's because you're constantly bullying people, you're constantly berating people, and so you need to have a public image that's the complete opposite, because God forbid anyone finds out, right?
Yeah, it's the trademark of that the cluster B personality disorder. You got that public face, that private face, and you really don't know until you talk to people who are in very close proximity with the individual for long periods of time. Like those three performers that are suing Lizzo. It's funny because I've heard a lot of different takes on this situation.
Okay, say yours, and then I'm going to say what I think.
Well, no. So I've heard. So first of all, I think Lizzo's a total fraud. Like she's obviously just in it for the fame and the money and whatever. And it would not surprise me at all if what these girls are alleging is true, and what they're alleging is like, they said basically sexual, racial, and religious harassment. Their dance, one of the dance captains or whatever, was apparently like proselytizing, with her Christianity on one hand, but also simultaneously engaging the girls in conversations about their virginity, about their sexual fantasies, this kind of stuff. And then they went on a trip to Amsterdam. They took the girls to a strip club, and the girls were encouraged to catch dildos that were being projected out of the vaginas of the performers, one. And two, were encouraged to eat bananas that were being presented from the vaginas.
Who among us can say that he's never eaten a banana out of a sex worker's hole? Be honest, guys.
I can say that. I haven't done that one. Definitely haven't done that one.
No. So my take on this is, I think Lizzo was weight shaming them. I don't think they're making that up. Here's why.
Oh yeah, that was that too. Like that was the other thing, is she said that she was concerned that one of the dancers had gained like a little weight, and then they made her have like an emergency 12-hour audition the next day. But I also spoke with somebody who said, emergency 12-hour auditions the next day is sort of the standard in the business, and girls get cut all the time because they're easily replaced.
Yeah.
And again, that's sort of the nature of being a backup dancer for a major star.
Yeah. My take on the weight shaming, and again, just because of the brand, I think this is that's why I think this.
Body positivist Lizzo.
I think Lizzo wanted to be the biggest person on stage. I think she wanted to be the biggest woman on stage. And so when she's like, I want big backup dancers, but not too big. You don't come for the queen, right? No. I'm the biggest. You're fat, but you stay back there. You're a backup dancer. If you're bigger than me, or you're close to the same size as me, people are going to be looking at you and wondering who you are. So no, you're skinnier. You're big, but you're skinnier than me. I'm the biggest on stage because I'm the star. I think that's what was going on.
That is, I would assign that a high probability of being accurate for sure. That would make sense.
Because I saw pictures, like when the story broke, I saw pictures of the backup dancers, and I was like, they're all big, but they're not quite as big as Lizzo. So, although Lizzo is
Oh
beautiful,
my.
obviously.
Oh, so beautiful, so stunning, so brave to get out
Remember
there.
when she went on a diet a few years ago and her fans bullied her?
No, I don't. But then
Yeah,
again,
she went on a diet and she was like, I felt good. My skin cleared up. I had energy and I lost some weight. And then her fans were like, how dare you, body positivity, blah, blah, blah.
traitor.
And that's when I realized, like, Lizzo has created a monster out of her fans that she can't control. And until she has the nerve to stand up to her fans and say, you know what? I don't care what you have to say. Like, I love my job and I'm fine with being bigger, but I have to make sure I'm healthy enough to keep doing this for as long as I want. Until she has the nerve to do that, she's a prisoner in her own body because of her fans. So it's like, she is quite literally sacrificing her own health, her own life for the fame, for the money.
And as we've seen with Madonna, some of the celebrities, once they get a taste of it, it's almost like they get addicted to the fame, the attention. It's like a drug, excuse me, a drug unlike any other. And Madonna, she got that plastic surgery, and then suddenly she's got some sort of infection, has to, she's hospitalized, IV antibiotics, like she had to cancel her tour. Like, honey, maybe it's time you just like let yourself age gracefully and naturally and stop trying to hold on to this, idealized 20-something pop diva version of yourself that no longer exists. Like,
yeah, it's like, I'm not a Madonna fan. I don't know if I could name 3 of her songs, but if she wanted to keep doing tours and like she wanted to perform as long as she wants, and I understand, like I've heard performers say this, like, I love performing, it's the greatest thing, there's just so much energy and I love it. If she wants to keep doing that, like, you need to be healthy, and when you get to a certain age, that means that you do need to change your performance to something that is sustainable. I don't think there's anything wrong with Madonna saying, like, okay guys, not going to be doing as much dancing and running around on stages I have in years past. I'm getting up there. Like, there's going to be more sitting, but like, I'm still going to be performing. I'm still going to be singing for you guys. Like, I don't think anybody would really object to that, but it's the need to like stay young. It's like, they just can't accept the fact that they're getting older.
yeah, right. And you see the same thing in a lot of gay men. It's this sort of like, with men, it's more of this idea of the pueriternus, the eternal boy, the adult man child. And there's a heterosexual version of the same thing, but this idea of sort of holding on to youth and, like just this resistance to growing up, to responsibility, to more mature behaviors. It seems kind of toxic, and when you see the people that embody that attitude, they don't turn out so great. I mean,
Yeah.
or maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe Madonna is
because,
exactly where she wants to be.
They say that 30 is gay 80. And that's, oh, it's gay 80. But when you go on Twitter, like the really hoey gay accounts of men who are like still like out at the clubs and everything, and like they're shirtless and they're trying to like keep a good physique so they can be shirtless and go to the clubs all the time. Those guys are always in like their late 30s. They're always like 36, 38, some of them in their early 40s. And it's like, okay, so if 30 is gay 80, then like, what does that make you? You're dead already. And it's like, you got to grow up at some point. Like, do you really want to be at the club when you're 50? Is that a thing you want to do?
Yeah,
I guess some people are. I guess some people want to do that. All right.
Out here on the island, the Friday night underwear party is the scene.
Yeah.
It's over at a club called the Ice Palace, and I have a couple of friends that work it. And it's the big to do. Like, the guys come out to the island for the weekend, You know, they go to the Friday night underwear party and they meet their weekend boyfriend, and it's like a whole thing out there. I can't bring myself to
Where do
go
you put your
because
phone?
so a lot of times they have like fanny packs or like arm wallets or
Okay.
leg wallets that like strap on.
Okay.
And then they run around in like sneakers or sandals with like a jock strap or like a little mankini bathing suit style thing. I asked the guys, I was like, could I wear boxers to the underwear party? And they were like, I think so. Like, you know, they're underwear. And Clava is like, and one guy was like, oh, I see guys in boxers all the time.
Okay.
So maybe I'll probably have to go scope it out before the end of the season just to see what it's about. I'm pretty sure I have a good idea because I've been to sort of similar things in the past. Yeah. But it just tickles me there is like, and a lot of the guys are, you know, in their late 30s to early 50s. And, you know, it's a lot of, and also a lot of the guys out here are coupled and in open relationships, or they're married and they're not, you know, monogamous. It's funny because I re-downloaded Grindr because I am recently single. Well, not recently, but like newly single-ish. And I was just like looking through, and so many of the dudes are in relationships, are in open relationships, they're married, they're partnered. And I was just like scrolling through profiles, like just looking at that one trait. And literally it's like more than half of them are like all in relate. I'm like, why are you on here? Like, I don't get it. Like when I'm in a relationship, generally I'm not,
Exclusive.
I'm exclusive. I'm not looking for something else because like the whole point is to find that person that you can be exclusive with. At least that's how it is for me. You know, I guess for other people it's different.
I just don't understand the idea of an open relationship because it's like, well, isn't that just friends with benefits? So like you're just changing the name, but it's the same thing. So
I think a lot of it also has to do with the nature of male relationships versus male female romantic relationships.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like we have a different attachment style, and I do think, especially in gay in gay relationships, we confuse romantic or erotic love, fraternal and paternal love. We get those all sort of mixed up.
Yeah,
and a lot of it has to do with, you know, people hate that I say it, but a lot of gay guys have, you know, traumas. They've got you know, interesting backstories that play into that confusion. And I myself have mistaken, you know, a fraternal love or a paternal love for romantic or erotic love in past relationships. So it's an interesting thing to observe. And I forgot how we got onto the subject.
No, but while we're here, you know, that's
holding on to immaturity.
I was talking with another friend about this. He's not gay, but I was talking with another friend about this just the other day about, you know, specifically we were talking about marriage and the just the difference of in nature of the relationship between spouses versus like friends. And I said, yeah, you know, if I was like hanging out with one of my bros, you know, I have a few. If I was hanging out with one of my bros and then out of nowhere he like we were watching a movie and then out of nowhere he just started like cuddling with me on the couch, I'd be like, whoa, like what are you doing? Because yeah, there is this fraternal love, but that is not a romantic love at all. And you know, I know they like to say that like, oh guys, it doesn't matter, like you know, if you can stick it in, like it's fine. It's like, no, not at all. Like one of the most important things that you need to be able to do, everybody, men, women, everybody, figure out those different types of love and, you know, figure out when you're feeling which, and don't conflate them, don't cross the wires, because like I said, yeah, if one of my bros started like started getting fresh, I'd be like, what are you doing? That's not what I thought this was like. And that's not to say that we don't have like deep relationships. We've certainly had like heart to hearts and very open, honest conversations with each other about deep topics. But that doesn't mean that I feel any sort of romantic, attraction to them. Even if like physically they might be attractive, it's like, yeah, but I just don't feel that. So
yeah, and that's kind of one of the points of dating, right? Is to sort of like figure out if you have that level of compatibility, if there's something interesting there that you guys want to pursue. But now it's just like that's all sort of gotten, I don't know, like replaced with apps and like matching on the apps, and then I guess like you can go on a date if you match on the apps. But I don't know. I find it all very fascinating and kind of ridiculous, and this is probably why I will remain single for the rest of my life. But I mean, I think we did a pretty good roundabout. We got to talk about your book. We got to talk about Storycraft. We talked about movies. What's your favorite movie of all time, by the way, while we're on the subject?
Oh, geez. Oh, don't do this to me.
I give you mine. It's Aliens 1984, Sigourney Weaver, the second one in the trilogy.
Oh, okay. I love Alien. The first one.
An original screenplay.
Yes.
Although the second one, I guess, is technically a derivative of the first. But
I don't know. I can name a few. All right. My favorite director who's currently alive is Alfonso Cuarón. And I really loved his movie Gravity. I know some people think it's just Sandra Bullock floating in space. It's not just Sandra Bullock floating in space. That is a movie about the presence of God in a very science-centered world. Love that movie. My favorite director of all time is Billy Wilder. And my favorite movie of his is Sunset Boulevard. I've seen that probably 4 or 5 times now. Such a good movie. It's about a screenwriter who winds up accidentally he's down on his luck. He winds up accidentally at the mansion of an old silent film star. And she wants to make a comeback to movie making. And so he's going to try to help her. While also essentially, in some sense, whoring himself out because he's behind on his rent and his car payments. And so he's living in her house rent-free while working on the script for her comeback movie. I also really like the movie The Way, Way Back. That was directed by that's from the same studio that did Little Miss Sunshine.
So Sunset Boulevard was 1950.
Mm-hmm.
The Way, Way Back.
Way, Way Back. I believe that was 2013.
2013, yeah.
That was the first movie I saw where Steve Carell played the bad guy. And he did a really good job because I was like, oh, Steve Carell's in this. I was expecting it to be like, Evan Almighty or something. And then I was like, oh, he's an asshole in this movie. He did it really well. I mean, he's a very good actor.
He is a good actor. He's got range.
He does. So those are a few. Oh, and then I also really, really like the movie Nocturnal Animals with Jake Gyllenhaal and Amy Adams. Directed by Tom Ford, the fashion designer.
Yeah.
Apparently, like every 10 years, he makes a movie and it wins a bunch of awards, and then he just goes back to clothes.
Yeah, what was the first one? Like an American Man? Was that
a single man? A single man. Yeah.
That movie was so tragic.
Yeah.
It's tragic. It's a very sad film, but beautiful. Oh my God. The clothes, the furniture, the cars, everything is just like it's you can tell it's a Tom Ford film.
Yeah.
Nocturnal Animals is fucked up though. Such a good movie. I love how it's layered, how she's like reading the script and you were also watching it at the same time.
And you're never confused about which storyline is which.
Right.
And I saw some behind the scenes stuff where he was talking about creating a very specific look for each timeline, for each storyline, because he didn't want there to be any confusion.
That would be what? That'd be blocking. No, that'd be the business. Which one would that be?
No, that would be art direction, really. Yeah, because that's about that. That's a little bit broader of like giving a look to a story.
A time
Not
period,
not blocking a business or like when you're filming an individual scene.
And then, okay, word.
Yeah.
No, that was so good. And that one scene where I think it's Jake Gyllenhaal who's basically like naked. It's like, hey, bro, like he was like ripped for that one.
And Nocturnal Animals?
Yeah, I'm thinking isn't that, maybe I'm thinking of a different movie.
I mean, there's like one scene where he's crying in the bathtub. Maybe that's it. It's like 10 seconds. Is that?
No, there's one where like he's a bad guy, and he's like, the cop comes up to him, like, and he's sitting on a toilet outside.
Oh, that wasn't Jake Gyllenhaal though. That was somebody else. I know. Okay, I know the scene you're talking about.
Oh no, I got him confused with the other guy. Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh, that man is beautiful. Whew. He was the guy from Kick-Ass. Okay. Apparently, he's like super straight. Like he has like 6 kids or something with his wife.
Good for him.
I know. I'm like, somebody needs to make babies because we're not doing it. Fuck.
Okay, and then since I mentioned him, Jake Gyllenhaal. He pissed off somebody in the
like
academy,
recently,
right?
or
no, it had to have been a while ago, because almost every year he gives a really strong performance in a movie, and he hasn't been nominated for anything since Brokeback Mountain.
Maybe he doesn't eat the baby. That's my way of saying he's not in their little satanic pedophile club. Maybe he did something to anger them or something.
Maybe. He is the only celebrity the only movie star that I followed on social media, because his Instagram is really funny. At least back when I followed it. I'm not on Instagram anymore. He was actually really funny. And that's when I see, we were I was in a bit of a conversation about this on Twitter the other day. The era of the movie star is over, because movie stars used to be very protected by the studios that they were contracted with. And so you really didn't see or hear anything about them outside of like the very controlled stories that the studios allowed to be published. And now with social media, like you said, these are people who just love the fame, love the attention. They feel the need to put their faces on your screen at every available opportunity. And so then it's like you watch a really good movie where, I don't know, Anne Hathaway gives a great performance, and then you follow her on Twitter and she's like complaining about how her neighbor like drives a car that's too big, and she's calling people in the middle of the country idiots or something. I don't know if she does that on Twitter. I'm just coming up with an example, but
right.
And it just ruins that actor for you. Like the next time you go see them in the movie, you're like, oh, but you're kind of a jerk. And I could put that away if I just never heard from you, but you're the one who is trying to put yourself on my screen at every available opportunity. So
yeah. Well, I think we can wrap it up there. We've gone about 92 minutes. Seph, your book is Come Out and Play. You guys can find it on Shmamazon. Let me see. I can pull it up again here. Whoop.
It's really good.
Yeah, go read Seph's book. I got to read it too. I've been meaning to get around to it now that I finished mine. Maybe I'll read that between the next Hyperion book.
It's a pretty quick read. It's not even 300 pages.
Yeah, no, I could show you. Where's mine? Mine might. Can you still buy mine? That's a good question.
Probably.
Brent Cope.
Oh, is that your pen name?
Yep. Well, that was my pen name for this, but yeah, this is it. My cute little sci-fi fantasy. It was actually it's a fun little stupid book about a kid with superpowers who ends up having to basically unite 2 parallel worlds, and he gets help from so everybody has like a parallel version of themselves in another universe, and his version of himself is a dragon in this other world, and so both of them are basically being hunted, and so they get sort of driven together, and then there's a whole ensemble cast, parallel storylines, references to like satanic cults and child sacrifice and things like that. And these like dark entities, all those like eyeballs things, are basically this like the darkness that sort of whispers and controls like the bad guys. So
Gotcha.
it was fun. I enjoyed writing it. I'll probably get back to it eventually, but anyway, guys, thanks for listening, hanging out. We'll probably do a live stream in the not too distant future. And we'll be back talking again about more controversial subjects. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. And thanks so much. We'll be back again. Bye-bye.